episode 2 of my life story. And so I'm going to name this thing. I am now the second episode of Ronnie Holmes' Creek Boy Adventures. And the reason I say that is uh, even in my yearbook, they called me Ronnie. My family always called me Ronnie. My brothers, my sisters, I was just known as Ronnie. And so the foundation of my life was in West Virginia. It definitely, uh, you'll find out if you pay any attention to what I had to say. I've traveled a lot, been a lot of places, done a lot of things, but every time I've been anywhere, it's always been the Creek boy sort of out of his comfort zone. But it's good, and it gave me a good foundational thing. But uh, I think that if I am to understand myself, or if my grandkids, my kids, whoever, my friends, anybody that's interested and wants to sort of follow, and I feel that it's something that anybody at my age should do what I'm doing, because your kids only know you to a certain extent, and your grandkids, they really don't know you at all, and it's sad but so, and I feel that way. I knew my grandparents, I love my grandparents, but to know about their lives, and where they came from, what makes them, what constitutes them, uh, I really I never did know, and I'm very curious, and I challenge anybody. I'm going to put a link to this thing that I'm doing, and it may take a long time, but anybody, if you're my age especially, and I'll be 70 in June, and this is April, so it's pretty close. Um, your family needs to know you. Who are you? What makes you up? And as I've been thinking about this, and having to go over my life to tell about my life, um, you know, I I don't really know how to tell it, but I know this. I know one thing for certain. I am my mama's boy. Make no mistake. My mother, uh, she was the greatest influence in my life, and for a lot of reasons. But she was an extraordinary person, and most of you don't know, because I didn't know about her for years and years, and I have been pondering, and maybe somebody can help me. And if you want to text me or call me or whatever, and try to give me some guidance or your thoughts, I'm really curious. How far does DNA go? Now that it's important, and everybody sort of has their opinion as far as the degree of importance, but the doctors ask you about your family's health history. Well, why? Because you carry those genes. You've got those markers. You've got those propensities. You've got those strengths and weaknesses that come through your DNA. But not only that, I've seen people who were adopted, and I knew their birth parents, and as those kids grew up, my goodness, they were just like their birth parents. I mean, their mannerisms, their voice, the twinkle in their eye, the it's just uncanny. So how far does that go? And I know some people, they're hot-headed, and they had hot-headed parents. There's all sorts of things that make you up, and then you can say what you want. I'm just going to tell you what my experience is. That certain peoples have certain tendencies. You know, so you have to know who you are and where you came from and all that to understand a little better your tendencies, because I've had some interesting impulses in life, and And I look, as I've been just sort of pondering all these things, I wonder how much influence just DNA had. So I'm going to sort of jump here, because I left off my last thing just starting high school, and there's a lot to say about that. But I'm going to take a little detour right now and talk about DNA and my mother, because she was extraordinary, and I say that over and over. And some of you knew her, and so many of you may not, but she was a feisty person. Well, so I am going to jump from 1968 and 69 up to the year 2000. Okay? So in the year 2000, I want you to get to know my mom's history, because I didn't know this stuff until the year 2000, and I was born in '54. So I was 45, and my mom was 70. So on her 70th birthday, she came to my house. We lived in Illinois at the time. She came to my house, and we were sitting in the living room, just talking. And I'm not much of a mathematician, but I can think in increments of fives pretty quickly, and it's pretty easy. But we were sitting there, and she was 75 years old in the year 2000. So I said, well, Mom, so you were born in 1925. And she said, yeah, I was born in 25. And so, I was thinking, I thought, well, all right, well, World War II actually started in 1938. I am a little World War II buff, history buff all around, but World War II and Vietnam. But so in 1938, Mom, you were 13 years old. She said, yeah. She said, we knew the war was going to start. They taught it to us in school. So I said, well, Mom, you told me that in Germany at 15 years old you had to decide what you were going to do, and what sort of training after just the basic reading, writing, arithmetic kind of thing that you're going to do. And you said you went to secretarial school at 15. And so she said, yeah, I did. So in my mind, still we're in multiples of 5, right? So I said, oh, well, so you graduated, you did this school in 1940. So you worked in Germany for 5 years before the war was over. And she said, yeah, I did. I was a secretary. And just curiosity, out of nowhere, I said, well, Mom, who did you work for? And she said, the Gestapo. And I said, what? And she started telling me, and this was the only time she ever talked about it. Okay. I didn't pry and all that, but she sort of let go a little bit. Well, she told me that in Germany during the war, you did not apply for jobs. When you became available as a secretary, then they assigned you to a job. And so she said she got assigned to the local Gestapo office in her hometown, Jena, and that she worked there during the war. Well, then she tells me the story about she went for a train ride, a little weekend vacation, going up to the mountains, and she came back to work, and the Gestapo officer calls her into his office, and he says, "What'd you do this last weekend?" She said, "Oh, I took the train up to the mountains with a friend of mine, and had a little vacation." And he said, "You're lying. I saw you at the train station with a non-Aryan man," whatever that classification was. I'm not sure. But so she got into a dispute with this guy. Of course, these guys are scary. We're talking SS, Gestapo, Death's Head, and she got into a dispute with him, and she said she slapped him, and then she picked a vase up off his desk, a flower vase, and threw it at him. And so I thought, oh my God, Mom, what in the world? And I said, well, what happened? Because these SS people are vicious. I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, he transferred me to Weimar, and I had to ride the train 60 miles to work and 60 miles back. And I thought, oh wow, okay. And then of course, like I said, junior historian, my mind peaks a little bit. I said, Mom, what was it that went on at Weimar that I remember it? And she says, the Buchenwald concentration camp. And I just, oh, it still gives me goosebumps every time I talk. Well, okay, so, and I don't think I told this in the previous episode. I told you about my dad being an Arab guy, but so so I began to question her a little bit, because I didn't really know as much about Buchenwald as I do know now, and so she starts telling me the story. Uh, the office that she worked at was in Weimar, but the Buchenwald camp was 8 miles outside of Weimar, and it was accessible only by a rail platform. So my mom went to work at a concentration camp, but she wasn't on the camp, she was in the town. And there were satellite factories all around it too, because Buchenwald, it was a death camp, but it wasn't an extermination camp. It was a death camp. They worked people to death. They had munitions factories around there. They had a stone quarry that was infamous. When they sent somebody to the stone quarry, they died. And my mom told me about a particular instance where some man came into the office. He was called in by the Gestapo for some reason, and she said he was sitting out in front of her desk in a chair, and he was really nervous, and he started to whistle, just out of nervousness, sort of a kind of thing. And she said that Gestapo officer came out, and he said to that man, he said, "You think it's funny that I call you in here?" And my mom said that she was doing the paperwork, signing the guy into the camp, and a week later she was doing the paperwork, the guy was dead. Well, subsequently, after she told me the story, I've studied it. I've got a book called the Buchenwald Report, which has interviews from prisoners. When the Americans took the camp, they interviewed everybody. And this guy went to the Library of Congress and got the 100 most pertinent interviews and put them in a book called the Buchenwald Report. And in that report, it really told me a lot about the place and how that it is possible that my mom really never did see anything, but she knew. There's no doubt she knew, because she was there. They had a commandant of the Buchenwald camp. Karl Koch was his name, and the Gestapo prosecuted him because he was stealing teeth and gold teeth. I'm talking about. He was taking things that were supposed to go to the SS, and he kept it for himself. He built his wife a great big old indoor horse arena, and a mansion, and so on and so forth. So he was siphoning SS money. And the SS came into my mom's office and busted the guy. And he got executed. They killed him. But his wife, she was particularly notorious. You hear these awful stories about these Nazis skinning prisoners and making lampshades out of their tattooed skin and all that. Well, there was one of the commandant's wife, Koch, that got executed. His wife was Ilse Koch, and she was a notorious, horrible human being. She enjoyed tormenting people. She was a pervert. She had orgies with the guards and the whoever, whatever. She was a nasty person, nasty. But after her husband was done away with, she stayed there. she stayed there. She got arrested, and well, she kept undercover for several years, I think. But she got arrested and ended up dying in prison. She committed suicide, I think 1960 or something like that. She wasn't in there very long, and she committed suicide. But so my mom, she told me she just started talking, and it was interesting, but it gave me real insight. But towards the end of the war, the Americans were at the gate, and she could hear the artillery fire and all that, but they marched 20,000 prisoners past her work, and she saw the condition they were in. It was a death march. They were trying to get the evidence out of there, so when the Allies took the place over, it wouldn't be as bad for the Germans, but it was. So I said, "Well, Mom, wow." They marched those people past the gate, and she said she passed her work, and she quit going to work. So, my next question was, "Well, Mom, did they question you after the war?" And she said they arrested me. So she got arrested, and ended up that she wasn't charged with anything, which I think she may well have potentially could have been, because she knew. She didn't see it firsthand, but when you're checking somebody in and a week later they're dead, I mean, what's going on in this place? Because the Germans, meticulous records keepers, they have record of every person that they killed in there. They're uncanny that way. So my mom said she got arrested, and they didn't charge her with anything. They used her as a witness, and she said that she was able to exonerate the innocent and convict the guilty. And there's a lot of guilty. It's a horrible place. I'm not going to get into it, but so this was Mom. She ended up she was a witness at the Nuremberg trials, and at the end of the trials, she was let loose with everybody else, and she had to walk all the way back across Germany to her hometown because there was no transportation. The country was destroyed. So yeah, that particular thing, it it blew my mind. When my mom told me that, it blew my mind. But and this is why I'm talking about the DNA, because I look at my life, and there are a couple of things that have always been very, very prominent, very prominent, in my life. I mean, if I'm into something, I'm all in, and and I think of my mom, and she told me when she was in school, she was in the Hitler Maidens program. Her brother was in the Waffen SS, the Army SS, and and so on, and she was a very zealous person. She said she didn't hate Jewish people, but she was she was a German nationalist, and so I think, man, the things she experienced, and the passions and things that were going on in Germany. And I think, man, I've got those genes in me, and all my life, I have been somebody aggressive. I mean, I've had to be in my thinking. I feel as though I've always had to be the keeper and the protector of my brothers, especially. And just life, and I started thinking, and I'm gonna jump again, I'm talking about the year 2000, but now I'm changing. So now I'm in basic training in the Air Force. Okay, so that would have been 1975. So in 1975, I went in the Air Force, and I was promised the mechanical field, but not a particular job. So they pulled a bunch of us, not a bunch, several of us, out of the barracks and said, "I need you to go over here and watch this film." So I went over to this building with these people and I watched this film, and what it was they were wanting to make us weapons mechanics, right? It's in the mechanical field. You know, but what is a weapons mechanic? I didn't know. And so I watched this film, and it was people that were loading bombs and missiles and rockets and all that stuff on planes, which looked pretty cool, but I didn't see any marketable skill involved in that afterwards. So okay, well, neither here nor there. They sent me there, so they were going to make me a weapons mechanic. Whatever. I didn't have a choice. So they said, okay, this is what we want you boys to do. Okay, fine. So the next step was had to go into this office, and there were several guys, old dudes, civilians, civil servants, sitting at the desk, and I had to be interviewed by this old guy. And so he just starts asking me questions, and I didn't understand what was happening. But what was going on, he was giving me an evaluation. You know, he was asking me questions to evaluate my disposition and my mental state. I didn't know what I assumed this later. I'll tell you what happened. So this guy starts asking me these questions, and he was a nice guy, and I was okay, enjoying it. And out of nowhere, he asked me. He says, "Well, have you ever been in a fight?" And I said, "Well, yeah, What do you mean you ever been in a fight? Come on, And I was 21 years old. And so I said, "Yeah, yeah." And he said, "Well, how many?" I said, "How many? Since when? You mean, what are you talking about? How many since when?" He said, "Let's say since you're like 15, in that range." I said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe 20, 25." He said, "What? 25 fights?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I didn't think it was extraordinary at all. And so he said, "Well, what were you fighting about?" And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I thought, well, you know, some asshole smarts off. Oh, excuse me, I don't mean to swear. Somebody smarts off. Somebody messes with my brother. Somebody messes with my girl. Somebody messes with my mother. Somebody messes with my stuff. I said I've gotten in fights at red lights and whatever. And he dropped his glasses down the end of his nose. He looked over at me and he said, "Okay," and it was over. That was that was the end of my interview. Well, I didn't. I said, "Well, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever." And the thing is, I had no idea that he would look upon that as being extraordinary. Number one, because I just thought, hey man, I'm a man. You know, I am from West Virginia. We settle things that if need be. I didn't think it extraordinary. I could blame it on my upbringing, the military or whatever, or blame where I was raised or how whatever. But the reality of the matter is, I liked it. I liked the contest. I like the aggression. I like the me or you, the survival part of it, and I was very good at it, but the reason I was good was well, I was strong. I went 5'9", 155 pounds until I was 33 and started catching on, but so I look back and I think, man, I guess that was, and I started thinking of the reasons. I thought, man, that I guess most people weren't like that. The people around me, some of them scrapped quite a bit, but but I was a little over the edge, and the domination, just you, the the feeling, and you have to understand it. If you've never been there, you don't understand it, and that's why I have to say it has to be in my DNA because I see a more rational world, I, I guess, and I've adapted. When I became a more a spiritual person, I put down the aggression, but it was there. I mean, it's there. It's there today. You know, it can flare at any time. And luckily, I'm old. I have to be a little more cautious. I'd get killed. But I look at that aggression, and there's something different in that, and I think, well, on my mom's side, yikes, it's pretty scary, your mama's family, half your family are Nazis, you know, dedicated, committed, Gestapo, SS, the whole deal. They were Nazis, and I have studied the war and how it came about. World War One, World War Two, and all that. And I've studied it extensively, and the German people have a rich culture, great artists, great writers, great philosophers, great sculptors, great science, the optics and things like that. Germany is known for machining and engineering and excellent products. They build a machine to do something and it's always extraordinary. German, and their organization and things like that. Some of those traits are really really in me. And I wonder, well, was it this, or this? But I am my mama's boy. I love my mother. She loved me. She was close to me. I was close to her. She was intense. If she was your friend, she was the best friend anybody could have. Not just a cliche about giving the shirt off your back. My mother would empty the house out for somebody in need, But she was very kind. But man, if she was your enemy, she was intense. I mean, she get intense with her own kids, you know. She took turns having fallouts with us kids, and she only did it to me once. But I mean, that was her. That was her. And if you had a problem at school, my mom had to go down to the school. She was almost always on our side, regardless of the situation. But there wasn't much. We weren't bad in that regard. All right. So I go through life and have all this pent up passion and intensity, and it comes out in my youth in physical aggression. But not only that, but if if I was a friend, if I was in love, I've always been very passionate. Eventually, in the beginning of high school, I discovered girls, and they discovered me, and we were off and running. But I'm a passionate guy. I mean, if it's my girl, it's my girl. And and that passion runs in like sports, for instance. I don't like to lose. Nobody likes to lose. I don't think anybody likes to lose. But I really, all my life, I've been very competitive. I don't want anybody beat me in anything. Nothing. and unfortunately, that's not quite what's happening in old age. And this is weird, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it because this is the way. When I was a kid, like in school, where we go somewhere, and there'd be a group of people, and I had this aggression challenge thing. Just it was in me. And I would go into a room, a classroom, a gathering, whatever it was. And my first thing I did, I surveyed the room, and I looked around at each person, and I thought, I think I can beat that person up, and that one, and that one, and that one. I went around the room, everybody. I looked at everybody. I looked. I didn't look at the girls thinking of beating them up, but you know, I figure, okay, well, I can whip half the room already because it's half girls. but but I looked. I don't know why. I don't know why. It went on for years like that. I'd look around, okay, and I'd see somebody that looked, physically large or acting aggressive, or whatever, and I thought, I gotta watch that one. And that was just how I operated, and there was no reason for that, but something inside me made me that way, and so maybe it might help some people, my grandkids, somebody understand. Now, one good thing is, you're only going to have so much of my DNA running through your veins. It can only be half at best. So, but all right. Now the other part, on the other half of my family, all right, I got the Nazi genes, the conquer, the dominate, whatever, supremacy kind of, whatever. But on the other side is the unknown, right? All I know about the man that I don't know. I don't want to derate the guy or anything. I don't know him. But he was, according to the DNA, a Bedouin, and Bedouins are nomadic people, and they go from North Africa, where I was born, Libya and all that. They go up through the Ural Mountains and all that. They go through Turkey and on up into that area. That's where they roam. So, so as I survey my life, once again, there's some things about me that are just extraordinary, and I became acquainted with an old high school friend just a couple of years ago, and this person had been living in the same house. I think she was a couple of years younger than me, whatever. But she was living in the same house since she was 12 years old, and she was in her late 60s. So as we began to talk, it makes me think sometimes I long for that kind of situation, because you got your lifetime of friends and family and schoolmates and work people, and they're all there. But I had moved. We started counting. She asked me about how many times I had moved, because she hadn't moved hardly any. And I started counting, and I counted 33 moves that I could remember. Now, I'm 69 years old. Basically, I was moving every 2 years. My whole life. My whole life, I have moved every 2 years. Now, there have been some places I've stayed. I think the longest, I've been here in Huntsville. I was here for, I think, like 15 years. I went back to West Virginia for a year. Now I'm back in Huntsville. And I've decided that I have to stay here. I have to. It is in me to pick up and go. Once again, when I was a kid, I told you about it, I cut my hand and got this stiff finger from making a costume, a Halloween costume. To me, the life of a hobo just, I thought, man, that is so cool. You got all your stuff on tied on the end of a stick, and you just go hanging out and riding trains. You stop the trains in West Virginia, it was great. But when I was young, I don't even know how I found out about hobos. We didn't have communication. there, there was like 3 channels on an old black and white TV that didn't enter into my world hardly at all. Leave It to Beaver and Sky King and the Roadrunner. I mean, there was a little bit of stuff, but there was no influence. But yeah, the whole moving thing, it's in me. I can't help it. It's if somebody says let's go, I say okay. You know, it's irrational sometimes. I just I remember I moved to Florida, and it had been freezing cold 3 winters in a row right when I got out of the military. I lived in Steubenville, Ohio, but in the late 70s. In the late 70s, there was a string of nasty blizzard winter stuff, and you know, and somebody comes along and says, "Why don't you go with me to Florida? I'm moving to Florida." And I was, I got out of the Air Force. I was enrolled in school, going to Jeff Tech in Steubenville, and I said, "Oh, I can't do that. I've got school," and it was a she. She says, "Well, what have you got to lose?" And I thought, "Yeah, here we go. What have I got to lose? I'll just go down to Florida and go to school. Well, I ended up in Houston. Didn't go to school. I ended up doing it later. But the jumping around, just this last year and a half. Oh, let's see. Well, let's go a couple years back. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the last couple of years I moved 3 times. When I moved to Texas, I told you I went to Florida. I ended up moving to Texas. I moved to Texas. My whole life's possessions fit in my car. '73 Torino. All my stuff fit in the car, and basically a few clothes and toiletries, and my fishing stuff. I mean, I didn't have much, and it was wonderful because the freedom of it, the lack of responsibility. What here in my life here, just the last couple of years. Well, not even that. I haven't been on my own like that very many times for very long. And when I have been, it's just been amazing. And here in the last couple of years, all the moving, I have gotten rid of a lifetime of accumulation of stuff. I mean mountains of stuff. And when I moved from West Virginia back to Huntsville, everything fit in my car. My little Honda CRV. Everything fit in my car. And I am just exhilarated because of it. I mean, I love it. I love that I can just pack up and do whatever I please and all that. But it's got to stop. It's got to stop now. I got health stuff. I'm not gonna whine about health stuff. I got health stuff, and I need to be around my family because the Bible says 70. That's 70. I'll be 70 in June. I'm breaking down. Planned obsolescence. And everybody's that way. So I hope. I hope that maybe my family and all that, as you see me going through life, I want you to understand the things inside of me. I didn't know what was going on inside my grandmother and grandfather. No idea. I had no idea. Maybe to some degree, and I hear stories and all that. But if my kids and my grandkids and my friends or anybody wants to know, I'm gonna tell it, and I'm gonna keep telling it, and I am not gonna shave. I have vowed not to shave until I finish, and I'm spinning my tires in 9th and 10th grade. So I'm going to end this round and maybe start a new one. I'm trying to keep my sequences a little bit shorter so that somebody can just pick up a little bit if they want to. Well, thanks a lot. It's been fun, and we'll talk to you soon.